Hello and welcome to the MDC Talks. We are the Motion Dance Collective, a Screendance production company specializing in the creation, presentation, and education of dance on film practice. This is Anna. We have James Williams with us today. We've also got Omari Motion Carter. And our guest on today's episode is Nicola Hepp. Born in Sweden and currently based in the Netherlands, Nicola is an award-winning director and choreographer with an extensive background in dance. So grateful to have you with us today, Nicola. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We love to ask this question first for anyone that comes on the podcast. What does the term screen dance mean to you?
Well, I know that it's been a kind of often discussed term. For me, I think it's all about if a choreography is created specifically for the screen, taking into account the specific traits of the medium, well, then for me, that's a screen dance. Yeah.
Amazing.
And do you use that term yourself when you describe your work? I know some people might say dance film and video dance. Do you actually use the term screen dance when you describe the work that you do?
Yeah, I'm in between screen dance and dance film sometimes. Sometimes I feel that some of my work fits better to the term dance film, and sometimes it fits better to the term screen dance. Also because if you say dance film, then somehow you're implying a little bit more, in my opinion at least, that it's telling more of a story in a traditional sense. Dance doesn't necessarily have to, in a way. Well, it's also, again, a personal feeling about it. But, and it also depends on who I'm talking to a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Great. So what initially drew you to making dance film?
Well, I've been really interested in film in general ever since I can remember, and dance was always part of my life. I trained as a dancer, and well, to be honest, when I was making dance work, I always kind of, the initial starting point for me to make work was always that I kind of saw it in front of me. So I always had this image of, oh, I want to make this, and oh, I have an idea, and then I saw this idea in front of me. Right? So when I started to make work which included video, then it was very kind of organic, that it just fell into place. And at a certain point, I just felt like, oh wow, this is really where all my interests and skills kind of come together. So yeah, it was a very organic process in that way.
Amazing. So that kind of answers my next question, but before, I know you did your master's in choreography and new media with a focus on film. So I was just wondering before that, what role, obviously you said you trained in dance and you've always been intrigued by film. So was that really your chance to hone all of the interests in your life into one?
Yeah, in a way it was. Like I said, I was really trained as a dancer, and initially I thought to pursue a career in dance.
Yeah.
And as my education went on, I really felt that I wanted also to make and to create my own work, and that started actually quite early on.
Okay.
So that was kind of a drive that was there inherently. And what I felt at a certain point was that I wanted to combine dance with images on a screen, like not necessarily just as a background, but also really taking part in the dance. So it was like a two-way street in a way. The dancers were reacting to what was happening on the screen, and yeah, there could also even be interaction. Some of my work, there's been interaction with the timing that was the video images.
Yeah.
So that was something that I could really explore during my master's.
So Nicola, sorry to interrupt, was that live performance then with screen integrated?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Live performance work that I started doing back in 2002, I think.
Okay.
So it's a long time ago. And and then when I went to do my master's in 2004, that's something that I really concentrated on, live work with video, somehow integrated into the piece, and whether that was on a monitor or on a large screen. or in a kind of installation setting where the audience could walk around and there would be dance and something to view on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
That was what I was kind of investigating during those 2 years.
Wonderful. One of the themes that you seem to circle back to a lot in your work is the concept of aging and loneliness.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering what inspired you to tell these kinds of stories.
Well, I think loneliness is something that is really part of us, of our humanity in a way, that you want to, as human beings, we want to be understood, we want to connect to other people. And for me, inherently, there's something about that is also impossible in a way. There's, nobody can ever really look into your head and to really know what you've been through and how you think.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something a little bit sad about that. And also, it interests me. So that's something that I've always kind of been drawn to, whether that was in literature or in film or in life.
Yeah.
That theme kind of came around really naturally in that sense. And aging, I've been thinking about a lot, and I think that actually really connects to the relationship I have with my father.
Mm-hmm.
He was my dance teacher to start off with.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and he was a little bit of an older father, so to speak. He, in that time, I mean, we're going back to the 70s. So when you were 44 and had your child, then you were kind of seen as an old dad, because all the other dads were like around 30.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always kind of knew my dad is a bit older, but he was always seen as somebody very young. So people always kind of estimated his age at least 20 years younger.
Right.
And he was always very happy about that. So the whole thing was like, oh, somebody came up to me today and said, oh, wow, how old are you? And they thought I was 35 when he was then 58, you know?
Right.
This was something that was kind of very present in growing up, was just his age as always very present. And he really has big troubles dealing with that. It's a real struggle for him. As an ex-dancer, as a person who kind of stayed in time, I think around the age of 13, really, he finds it very, very difficult to accept the fact that he's getting old. He is old. I mean, he just turned 88. So
wow, 88. And he's still dancing, right?
Yeah, I mean, he was actually in a performance just last November in Sweden, part of a performance.
That's incredible. I mean, I think I speak for all of us dancers when I say our dream is to be able to dance into our old age.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that's great. It's wonderful. But for him, it's a really difficult process to get older. And for me personally, the interesting thing about it is that I was always the youngest everywhere. And I was the youngest in school, I was the youngest in my dance class. And at a certain point when kind of around the time when I turned 30, I think, I was like, oh, wow, I'm not the youngest anymore. That's you know, and I could actually really kind of rest in the fact that, oh, wow, it's okay. I'm me and the age that I am and the experience that I have, and that makes me who I am. Absolutely. So, that kind of really also brought up this issue again for me, that aging is such a big part of who we are and how we deal with it also.
Yeah.
It's so funny that, because I was speaking to my students the other day about the responsibility of film and how back in the day with the paintings, you know, kings and queens would paint themselves at 21 and then that painting would forever remain their image even after they had long gone. And so now that we have this digital format to do that, it's like we kind of we're capturing the youth of a time, you know, we're capturing a moment in time forever that will be forever present, right? In some way. So then there's such a responsibility there now when we pick up a camera and press record. And I think that the work, because your dad features in quite a few pieces of your work, and especially Echo, is just where that responsibility is so present and so well done that it's a moment that, like, it's one of those films that you want to download and have that DVD at home, like, and it's only 1 minute, but I'd buy that DVD and just put it on my shelf just to say I had it like a vinyl. But yeah, we love that film especially, and it's great. I was wondered if you could talk us a little bit through the process of creating that with your dad.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, that was interesting actually, because, well, like I said, during my master's, I'd been working with my father for the first time actually. So there was a moment where I decided, hey, actually it would be great to put my father in the dancer's role to kind of change the relationship between us, because I'd been dancing in his pieces, and now I was doing a master's in choreography, and I felt like, hey, actually I want to work with my dad, and how can I, you know? So then I worked with him for an installation project where it was basically, well, I'll just tell that very briefly because that has relation to Echo in a way. It had a screen in the middle of the space, and my father was standing on one side of the screen, and there was a younger dancer who happened to be exactly 50 years younger on the other side. So the piece is called 2373 because that was the ages of the dancers at that time. And you as an audience, you had to kind of choose if you were watching my father with the video on the screen behind him, or if you walked around to the other side to look at Aymar, the other dancer, to see him, the young dancer, with what was happening on the screen. Or you could look from the side and then you wouldn't see the screen at all, but you would see the two dancers.
Interesting. Okay.
And on the screen, the dancers were together. So it was my father and Aymar, one after another.
Right.
So, and I worked with them on that piece, and I was very happy with it. And I actually thought it was my graduation piece. And then I thought, afterwards, maybe I'll try to see if I can tour with this a little bit, and we could go around and show this performance. But then it coincided with me having my second child. And after that, I was just kind of very, very busy with family life with two kids. And then my father got older. So 2-3 years later, I realized, like, oh, wow, actually, we can't do this piece anymore because it will be too much for him. It was kind of a lot of things going down to the floor, and also he lives in Sweden. So, you know, to have him travel to all kinds of places, I didn't really see that happening.
Yeah.
Then I thought, well, you know, that's a real shame. I was a bit sad about the fact that I hadn't kind of picked that idea up to do something more with it. And then around that time, I saw an open call from 60 Seconds Dance, which is this website that have an open call for 60-second dance films. And as soon as I saw the call, I had this kind of image in my mind of my father circling around and looking at himself in the mirror and seeing himself as a young boy. I was like, oh, wow, it's a film.
Yeah.
And then I thought, oh, and if I make a film, I mean, I knew that I could, that my father would be able to rehearse with me and to be on a shoot. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, let's make a film. And that's then what we proceeded to do. So I was, well, working a bit on the concept first, thinking a bit more about it, what I wanted. And I was talking to some people from post office in Amsterdam for some VFX, because even if you don't see it, there's actually a whole lot of VFX in this film.
Oh.
Because it's filmed in a dark space where there's a large mirror.
Right.
And I mean, it's kind of like a vacuum, but obviously the camera woman, she's circling around my father, and every time that you see the image of my father in the mirror, her image was also there, of course, because she's filming around. So she had to be kind of brushed away, cleaned out of the image, frame by frame.
Super fun job.
Yeah.
Super fun job.
Super fun job, yeah. Really kind of diligent work. And then we also filmed the little boy. We filmed him in front of a green screen so that we could kind of paste the mirror.
Wow.
And so that's kind of the only edit point. Actually, it's not really an edit point, but that's what happens. We pasted him into the mirror, because the rest of the film is just a one shot. It's one take, really. So
Right.
we were practicing about trying to get the timing right for it to be exactly 60 seconds. And to be honest, that was, I think, the smallest challenge, because both both my father and this camera woman, they had such a good sense of timing that literally each take came out like 57 seconds, 1 minute,
Wow.
59. You know, it was like, however many takes we took, they were just around 1 minute. So it was really done by both of them.
That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we love Echo. That was the first film of yours that we ever encountered.
Yeah.
And so when we met you in Amsterdam at Cinedans, we were so excited because we got to meet the maker of Echo. And it means a lot to us. We've watched it obviously a lot of times,
I've shown
as
it to
I'm
students.
sure most people have, which is one of the joys of 1 minute films.
Yeah.
But I would love it if you could talk to us a bit about when you're making these 60-second dance films. I know you've made quite a lot of them.
Yeah.
What elements or choices help you to tell the story in such a short space of time? Because that is such a huge challenge. I know it's something that we have sort of tried to dissect many times before, but you do it so well, and every 60-second film of yours that I've seen is so succinct, and there's such a strong story. So I would just love it if you could, give us some gold about that sort of making process, and what for you is the most significant part of that.
Yeah. That's. I'm thinking a little bit about it. It's
Of course.
because to be honest, I find that this kind of 1 minute format is really it fits me really well. The kind of scope of 1 minute.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm sitting down to edit something, then it kind of feels like, oh, and we're getting up to, and there's the 1 minute mark,
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing when I'm thinking about, okay, I'm going to make a film and it has to be 1 minute, is to really kind of limit yourself in terms of choices. That there's just not, at least for me, when I make my films, I think in general, I'm kind of minimalistic in that sense, that I prefer to kind of have less, not go off to 5 locations, for example, but to keep it to 1.
Yeah.
Be a bit strict with yourself, like, okay, this is the idea. Like, for example, with Echo, it was clear that it was that kind of looking at yourself in the mirror and seeing yourself at the age as how you see yourself, whether or not you're 50 or 80 or 20, but seeing yourself at that age, that was the kind of theme. But the idea for the film really also had to do with, okay, I'm going to make a one-shot movie, and it's all about going around the character. So that was kind of the also a very important part of the form, in a way, is that important. Or when I made the double, it was also about one place, and it was about these two characters who met and were very similar, and kind of you weren't sure, is he really meeting somebody else or is it himself, or
Right.
what is this? So it's like kind of one small thing that I want to say, or that I want the viewers to kind of perceive or feel an emotion. Even it's not always really a story, I think, but it is in a way. But you know,
yeah, it's a journey at the very least.
Yeah, it's a journey. Yeah, but I try to kind of limit the choices in a way, to be really strict. Like, okay, it's just 1 minute, so be clear and, you know, be concise. Don't, for me at least, I don't want to go off in too many different directions, but I want to kind of keep it contained to what is it that I really want to say.
Yeah, I think this what I really liked about Echo was the fact that it was so limited to that single shot. There was almost no space in it for distraction. It wasn't, you didn't allow the viewer to lift out of the concept. There was kind of a purity to exactly what the idea was. It was not necessarily, to me, told through dance, which I think was really refreshing for me. Like I was a dancer, but now heavily focusing on camera and film. The idea that it was designed to be told specifically by a camera was really, really refreshing to see a choreographer approach film in that way and display choreography in that way, where actually the choreography was a subtext to the concept, and the film told the concept really beautifully. That it was really interesting and really refreshing to see a dance work that was carried by the concept and had the dance sort of play as a subtext to that concept. And I think that really helps get something across in such a small amount of time, because we aren't distracted by the movement almost. It really came down to what is the idea, and the idea is told so beautifully in that film.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that, you're right. I mean, that's what I also try to really do especially when you make 1 minute films, that you want to just kind of pinpoint that one thing in a way, like what's the crucial thing about this that I want to say. And then you don't necessarily need more than 1 minute. Something.
Yeah, amazing. So we know that you frequently collaborate with your dad a lot, and you've spoken a little bit about that, but I would love you to talk a bit more about how that collaboration has blossomed, because I think it's so special and so unique. And if it has impacted your work at all, or the way in which you work, because you said a little bit, you know, you wanted to have your dad in some of your work because it was vice versa as you were growing up. But could you talk a little bit more about what that working relationship is like, and how it's evolved over time?
I think, well, you know, I've worked with him now in the installation that I talked about, the 2373 piece, and in Echo, and in Songs of the Underworld. And also there's another 1 minute film that I kind of made out of recycling material that was from the installation originally. But that was in a separate process. I'm thinking it's interesting in a way for me, because he's from a different generation, so you know his choices are different. I remember when I was at school, when I did the modern dance education in Amsterdam before I did my master's, that he looked at some of the pieces that I made, and he was like, "Oh wow, oh you're so talented." I mean, he's a very positive always when he's seeing work by him. Oh, you're so talented, it's so nice, and but then he would suddenly go like, but that movement, it's a bit ugly. Why did you choose that? You know. So he's more kind of for the aesthetic. It needs to be pretty in a way, and that's not necessarily my kind of choices in what I'm looking for. And particularly for Echo, he found it very, very difficult that he was not allowed to dance more, because I made the choreography. I was first playing around with another dancer in the studio, because obviously my father's living in Sweden, and I felt like I want to work with somebody to get some input, not just that I'm standing and imagining. So I worked with this great Italian dancer, Manuel Ronda, and he and I kind of got this thing out with the hands, because something about my father's hands has always been very interesting to me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the starting point for the movements material that he does. And then I practiced it with my father when he arrived in Amsterdam, and he learned the material, and we changed it obviously, because there were some things that he wanted to do a bit differently. And then at a certain point he was like, and okay, so when do I dance? Well, no, but this is it. This is the dancing choreography. It's like, no, but I want to dance. Like, And to be honest, I think he, for a very long time, he still felt like, oh, well, okay, this is a film that my daughter made, but I don't really know what people will think about it.
Right.
And then it won the audience award at this competition that I sent it into, the 60 Seconds Dance.
Yeah.
And he was so amazed, and he was like, wow, it won the audience prize. He was so happy. He was even there to kind of be a part of the ceremony, because I couldn't come to him.
Wow.
But he was there, and so he was like, wow, it's people are so positive about this film, and it's so great. And yeah, so that was kind of interesting to see the way that he also learned from that in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also, after doing Echo, I kind of thought like, okay, now that's finished, that's done. I've worked with my father now, we made this film. It's a kind of, it's there, like you said, Omari, like it's a moment in time that you kind of capture, and we'll always have this film in a way, you know.
Yeah.
You can always look back on this, that when he maybe cannot dance anymore, that he can look at this and send it to people like, look, this is me in this film. Or later on, when he, hopefully that will take a long time, but when he's not there anymore, we have this film. But I thought that, okay, that's it now. I've worked with my father, fine. And then suddenly I had this new idea to work, I just kind of saw him in an image in my mind with my mentor from my education. This was a few years later. And that's how Songs of the Underworld started, because then that film started to kind of grow in my mind.
Yeah.
Where he's also in, and somehow he's just a very inspiring person in a way. I mean, he also has a very kind of, how do you say that in English? His face is really, well, you can see a lot of emotions on his face. He's obviously
very expressive.
Yes, he's very expressive. Yeah, I mean, he's obviously used to playing on a big stage. You know, he's a stage performer. So I always kind of have to bring it back. Right. And he's always, I think, a little bit disappointed that he can't go like the full 100% like how he feels it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I find him very expressive on the screen also. You kind of, you see his emotions, you see his face is kind of very telling. So that's still interesting to me. And yeah, now he's, like I said, he's turned 88 the day before yesterday, so not so long.
Oh, happy belated birthday, Dad.
Yeah. And well, he's not so mobile anymore now, but he'll keep going for sure.
What's your dad's name?
Rolf Hepp.
Rolf Hepp. Hey Rolf, we love your work. So that's amazing. I'm really glad you brought up the fact that one of the things that drew you to working with him was his expressive nature, because that's actually something that I really love about all your films. I mean, Traces, which I think is one of your more recent, if not the most recent film that you've made. What really touched me about that film was the expression and how expressive the male character in particular is, because I think that's something that we don't always see in Screendance. You know, there's almost this wall being built around whether to tell the story through our body as opposed to our face, as opposed to both. So I think that's definitely another thread that I noticed throughout your work. And it's amazing because obviously it comes from that initial spark from your dad, and maybe that's, I don't know, an unconscious or a conscious decision that's something that you wanted to be present in more of your films.
Yes, it's something that, exactly what you were saying now, like how to tell the story through the body, through the face, or both. That's something that I was thinking about also myself after my modern dance education. I've been kind of thinking about it a lot, because during my education, a lot of the time I remember being told, like, no, neutral face.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like all the time, what is a neutral face? I found it so hard to find this neutral face. And I still don't know what it is, to be honest.
Yeah, I used to get told off as well. I used to rest my face, but then I'd look angry. So it's not resting, no muscles use face. And my eyes have to be smiling in some way, look open and present, welcoming. They give you emotions, and it's like, but my whole face is closed, so I don't know what to do.
I still don't know, to be honest, what they mean. And I find myself, I mean, when I look at dancers, the people that really draw my attention are the people that have this kind of stage presence, and that's also their face. I mean, that's also something in their face that they're just by nature maybe doing. But I was so confused by having to not do it, or maybe I was overdoing, I don't know. But yeah, so it's been an issue.
Yes.
And yeah, I think the face is just so telling. And yeah, the male dancer in Traces is somebody who I also really was so drawn to because of his expressiveness, because of his face. So yeah, that's an interesting point.
Traces came from a live work as well, did it?
Traces is one of the pieces that came from one of the films that I made that came from a live work initially, and it's also a live work that was not mine. So it's a choreographer called Jason Mabana. He's Belgian, but he also works a lot in Britain, I think.
Okay.
And he made a piece for the Urban Contemporary Dance Department in Amsterdam, where I teach. It was the end of the year performance.
Okay.
And in this end of the year performance, well, I saw this piece and I was just so touched by it. It was so beautiful. And it's not at all, I mean, if you look at, it's interesting actually, if you can see the live recording of the piece and the film, because they have things in common, but it's not a recording of the piece.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of course, definitely. Yeah, because it's a lot of fragmentation, a lot of jump cuts going on, isn't there?
Yeah, and actually the whole point of how it started was when I was looking at this piece that Jason made. It was actually a piece for 10 people, and they were standing next to each other on a line. It's called the last line.
Okay.
And so you could see all 10 people when you looked at the piece. And then during the piece, they were also kind of turning like a wheel of time, more or less, was kind of the association that I got from it. So these 10 people were turning around, and they had a lot of duet work, obviously, which is part of the film. But the standing on a line next to each other kind of triggered me in a way, because I'd been working on this idea of a man and a woman standing next to each other, and where the man is somehow very vulnerable in a way, and there's something going on with him, and the woman has to support him. So that was kind of an initial idea that I'd been thinking about, and then I saw this piece from Jason. I was like, oh, wow, I love this. This connects to that idea, and I loved his movement material. So I asked if he'd be interested in working with me, if we could make this happen into a film, and he couldn't be in Amsterdam, so he just said, well, that's absolutely fine with me if you want to make that into a film. Just work with the dancers. Who are you thinking of? And so then I said the 2 dancers that I wanted to work with, and he said, I'll go ahead. And so we kind of took parts of the piece and filmed that together with this idea of them standing next to each other, and that's kind of how it happened.
That's incredible. I mean, that's a pretty unique situation to be in, I think, because we've made pieces in the past that were a live performance made by a different choreographer. Yeah. And it's definitely, you know, a lot of challenges come up when you're transposing that kind of work to screen, but also the relationship between the director and the choreographer. Because obviously you're also a choreographer yourself, and there are certain moments that I'm sure you re-choreographed for screen. So what was that like? I mean, it sounds like he trusted you a lot, which is amazing. You don't always have that. It sounds like he sort of said, thank you for your, you know, acknowledgement of my work. Here it is. Please do what you will with it. But
that to be honest, that was kind of a bit of how it was. And I felt really honored that he just kind of gave it to me in that sense.
Yeah.
And also very happy that he was very pleased with the results afterwards. And of course, I mean, it's not, I always make sure to tell when I'm talking about traces, or also in the credits of it, that I tell that it comes from this piece that he made, the last line. But it's not the last line, the film, you know?
Right.
So it's another film, but there's something that, there's some of the movement material, definitely most of the movement material came from his piece, and definitely also some of the feeling that he worked with the dancers,
right,
in the film, which coincided with my own kind of ideas of what I wanted to say at that moment with this film.
And that's what makes Traces a perfect title, right?
Oh, thanks. Yeah.
You pretty much traced over the concept.
Line.
Yeah, the last line. Ooh.
I'm curious to know about the actual your actual process of making itself, because Screendance has kind of got so many ways that people approach it. I think people come to Screendance from a lot of different places, you know, obviously choreographers and filmmakers, but also visual artists and installation artists and designers, and kind of everyone sort of feeds into it from a different starting place. And I think with that approach comes a million different approaches to actually making. It would be interesting to know what your approach is.
Yeah, there's something untangible somehow that I want to put into image and movement. And then very, very often I kind of need to start with the people that I'm going to work with. So most of the time, actually now I'm thinking back, I think all of the time, yeah, I first have to have the people, I have to know who's going to be on screen, who's going to dance this, who's going to be the character. So I can't just kind of think of an idea and have a a character in my mind, like, oh, the woman will do this or that, and the man or the old man or the boy or whatever. But I have to kind of see the person that will do this. And then I'll work with those people in a studio first. We'll make some movement material, or we'll somehow meet and work together. Then when we go into the shoot, I often have kind of an elaborate plan of the different shots that I want to use, and I have ideas of how it should be filmed, and we kind of go through that shot list. But I also really like to be able to kind of improvise on the set. So that's something that well, personally, I always keep that opportunity open to kind of just go for something. If you suddenly see like, oh, wow, but that's amazing, and that works great, and this, oh, the sunset or whatever. But that also means that you have to work with, that your collaborators also have to be okay with that. So my camera so far, they've been amazing. They've been so open to the moment. And actually a lot of the camera men that I worked with, or camera women, also had a dance background. So they also kind of were a little bit accustomed to that way of working, I think, or some more than others, obviously. But yeah, that's definitely a big part of my approach, to be open in the moment on the set, and to try things out also. And then when I go into the edit, I already have a clear idea in the kind of beginning stage of when I'm thinking about the film, of how I want to edit it. So some films, they'll like in Traces, for example, there's all these sharp, quick cuts from one thing to. That was obviously something that I already knew beforehand that I was going to do. And in Songs of the Underworld, it's more smooth and ongoing. So I also had that prepared of how I wanted to cut them. But then when I'm actually sitting and doing the editing, I mean, that's still when part, in a way, you know, I don't know who said that, but I really agree with it. You make a film 3 times, because you first make it in your head, and then you make it when you're filming it. But then when you're sitting down to edit, you're making it a 3rd time, because that's when you actually have the material that you filmed. And sometimes you see material and you're like, oh crap, I thought this would work, but it just really doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it sounds like you like to direct mostly when you're filming. You work with a crew. You don't shoot yourself, or do you sometimes?
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit nervous around I mean, nervous, but I'm worried that I will. Oh God, I will not record properly, or oh no, I forgot this, or whatever, the technical parts of the camera, so to speak. And I have that with computers also. I worry that I will then, oh God, I have to teach classes via Zoom. How will I manage? But then actually it's not that difficult. So, we've all done it now. But with making dance work, I think I really enjoy being kind of all the time looking over the shoulder of the cameraman, running around behind him or her, or sometimes looking at a monitor, but then help directing, and also letting the cameraman take a lot of responsibility, of course, of how to frame something. I do think that film is a collaborative process, and it's all about how we all can put the best of us into it. So I'm really so grateful that there's been so many people that have been wanting to work with me and to help achieve, to tell that story that I needed and wanted to tell. But directing is definitely kind of my role then during the whole process.
And do you tend, because you were mentioning working with different cinematographers and different crew, do you ever work with the same people? Like, have you found people that you tend to go back to, or does it really depend on the project that you're working on?
No, I go back to people a lot. And I prefer working with people that I already know and that I've already worked with. And some projects will be like, maybe I should ask him for this, and maybe I'll ask him for that. So it's not that I always keep one and the same person, but there's definitely like a pool of people that I keep coming back to. And that goes for, well, as you see with my father, but that also goes for other dancers as well. Celine, who was in...
Yeah, I noticed she's in a number of your films.
Yeah, she's also in Breathe, and she's also going to be in my next film. So, you know, there are definitely people that keep coming back, and I love working with people that I already know and that I already have a good working relationship with, because then you can also kind of let people, you know, like for example with Songs of the Underworld, I worked with this cameraman Chris Fawcett, who also was the filmer for the on-screen work for 2373.
Right.
And I knew that apart from being an amazing Steadicam operator, I also knew that I really trusted his opinion. So, you know, then it's so great that you're on set together. And if you're not clear, if you think something like, is this working? That you can just really be sure, like, okay, what do you think? And, you know, you can trust that opinion. Mm-hmm. And that's also with some of the other cameramen I worked with. It's also been like that. You know, I do, well, I think if you choose to work with somebody, it has to be somebody that you also really trust and can relate to, for sure.
100%. Fab. So could you talk a little bit more about, obviously we know that you work a lot in installation. I don't know if you still are creating installation-based work, but sort of translating that to film is a huge challenge in itself, you know, replicating that experience on the screen. And I know that...
On a single screen even. Right?
Yeah. So could you talk a little bit about the challenges with that, and maybe just the experience of trying to replicate that experience for the screen?
Yeah, I mean, replicating the experience of an installation to a single screen is not really something that I've done in a way. I think, if I understand your question correctly, I think actually what I've been doing is more or less the other way around, but also not really. Well, because the last installation, well, it wasn't an installation, but it was a performance with live dance and video. Mm-hmm. And there was a correlation between the choreographed dance on the screen and the choreographed dance that was happening live. Mm-hmm. That now, the last piece I made, I think, was about 3 or 4 years ago. So then it's always very clear when I'm making a piece that involves both live dance and a screen somehow, that those two things have to correlate, that they have to go together, that there's something about it that needs both. And also when I then do an installation, of course, then there's an added element of people being able to walk around and make their own choices. Yeah. But still, I'm taking then into consideration the live dance that is happening and what's happening on screen. Of course, if you're making a performance with something happening on the screen, or an installation with something happening on screens and live dance, it's not like a film that you're looking at, a standalone film. This timing is very different. So, for example, also in some of my installations, there were minutes long of black, for example, because then I wanted to focus the viewer on what was happening live in space, and then the moment that it comes back on screen is a moment in time that you want the attention to go there. So it's all about sending the attention of the viewer, which you do in a film also, but in a different way. But in a film, the way that you edit, the way that you work with the camera, you're leading the eye of the viewer. Mm-hmm. They're not free to look where they want. And if you're making a a dance piece with video, whether it's an installation or performance, I think you're also doing that. You're also kind of wanting the audience to pay attention to what's happening on the screen at this moment, and then to let that go and to look at what's happening live. I mean, the screen will always kind of be drawing the eye of the spectator. So you have to be very, very aware of that. As soon as you put something up on the screen, people tend to kind of look there and forget about the live dance unless you work with that. And that's what I found very interesting about it, actually, to kind of have that thing going back and forth, which also meant that a lot of the video material that was on the screen when I make installations or performances, they're very kind of slow and ongoing sometimes, so that you also kind of can lose interest in a way, so that you can see what's going on live. Or like I said, I will just go black in between parts. That's how it was in 2373, for example. Right. So yeah, that's that's how I've been doing it. But I think kind of the interesting thing for me was really about this, the sending the eye of the viewer, how to kind of try to have a little bit of control, even in a dance piece, in a live dance piece, that you're actually really, what do you want? Well, you can do that with lights also, for example, in a piece, you know?
Yeah, of course, yeah. And you're even finding now that my students especially obviously are now making a lot of split screen work, right? Because that's kind of the place we're in right now. Lots of Zoom influenced media happening. And what I found interesting about that, I've seen a few pieces now using split screen in different ways. And it reminded me of when I watch live work, and for example, there's people in different parts of the stage. There's a solo over there, a trio over there. And so I'm free to kind of look and choose what I look at. And I find that a lot of people are kind of doing more of that now, in a way of splitting the screen up to give you more choice. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I actually enjoy the idea. For a moment, I'm given a choice, and then I might have to watch it again to watch the left side. Yeah. Because maybe I paid more attention to one side or the other. But yeah, that is not a question at all. It was just an observation. But I don't know if you find that your students are doing more things like that. Are they doing lots of split screen stuff or anything with are your students working now during these times?
My students?
Yes.
Well, some of them have been, but my students, because I teach at the University of Arts in Amsterdam, I teach there. I don't teach film. I teach film or dance film in kind of on a freelance basis.
Okay.
So during this period, what was very interesting was that my students, who are dance students, suddenly, because they couldn't have their performance, they had to make films.
Yeah. So exciting.
Yeah.
Super exciting. And I've also been guiding them a little bit and helping them out with things. And it was so exciting to see their work, because it was also so very fresh. I mean, they are not necessarily, some of them have already had some experience with film, but not all. So for them, it was like the first time that they actually had a concept that they wanted to then put onto the screen. And obviously that's really beautiful to be part of, and to be able to help them with navigating all these things that you have to take into consideration. And you see all these first time mistakes with the shadow in the image, all these stuff that come out, but still the content and the rawness of their ideas, and that was beautiful. So I'm really, really proud of how they turned this difficult period around to something good.
Yeah, there's so much beautiful work being developed now, and even the Screendance Journal have just released their new application for the next round of articles, and at the end of their statement it says, all dance is now Screendance. Yeah. Right? And it's so funny like how Screendance has come in these waves, And sometimes it's quite popular and people are doing it. Like back in the 1990s, there was lots of stuff on the BBC and all that stuff. I mention it all the time. But when I started delving into Screendance in around 2010, 2011, there wasn't much going on at all, you know. And now in this time, every dance student has been forced to become a cinematographer overnight.
Yeah.
And it's so fascinating because it is a wonderful thing as well, but also there's such a big pressure now, you know, for I run a course called Dance and Technology at The Place, a London Contemporary Dance School here in the UK, and it's a Screendance intensive, and they have 4 weeks to make a piece of work. But within those 4 weeks, they learn about the exposure triangle and rule of thirds.
Storyboarding.
But 4 weeks is so intense. 4 weeks, 1 hour each week. It's like there's not enough time for. But that's where every course is having to do that. That's a specific, you know, dance and technology course. But imagine the touring and the young people schemes that would usually tour having to make those dance on film stuff now. It's weirdly amazing.
Yeah.
And I wonder what happens as things start to unlock a little bit now, whether people will just
go back to their usual
forget
ways,
that, not
or
worry about that information and just go straight back to live, or would there be more screens now within our spaces?
Yeah, because I think some people don't want to create, and that's what we had now also. There's something everybody wants to do, even though we are so passionate about it.
Yeah.
But there were also some people who kind of discovered it suddenly, that they were like, oh wow, that's so great, we can actually do this, and you know, so that's fascinating and really nice to be part of that kind of development suddenly. But I'm also very curious
to see what happens next.
Yes.
Nice.
Fabulous. Well, thank you so much for your time, Nicola. This has been a really great conversation.
Awesome.
We always ask, just for our listeners and everyone out there, if you could share maybe what's coming up next or how we can follow your work, because it would be great to stay tuned for what you have coming up.
Sure. You know, you can find me on Instagram. I'm Nicola Hepp Film, or on Facebook if you just look for my name. I also have all my films are on my Vimeo channel, so that's also a place. And yeah, like I said, well, Reset's already out. Tabula Rasa will be coming out in the coming weeks soon. And well, I just recently received a honorary production grant from Dance Films Association in New York.
Oh wow, yes,
Congratulations.
amazing. That is awesome.
Project, which I'm so excited about. That I've been I've been trying to make it for years already. So I don't even want to count the years, but many years. And it's a film that will involve shooting in Sweden, which I'm also looking forward to.
Amazing.
A lot of stuff going on, and the dancer in this film is Celine Mosa, who I also worked with before in both Breathe and Songs of the Underworld. So I'm super happy to have her on board, and she's been with me on this ever since we started with this idea. So, you know, she's waiting for it for years.
Excited.
Us will feel like, when we're finally standing there on set. So we'll see. It's coming up.
Fabulous. Well, looking forward to it.
Nicola, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome. We wanted to chat to you for so long, and it's been so nice to catch up. So yeah, thank you once again for joining us at this time.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun. Thanks.
And hopefully it won't be too long before we're back in Amsterdam, seeing you, reuniting. But stay safe and well, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon.
Stay safe.
Thanks.
Ciao.
Bye.